This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
Ori, let's start by giving our listeners and our watchers an idea about your background because it is virtually worldwide.
Yes, it is worldwide. And it's probably an interesting thing to think about where I start, whether I start from the last or from the beginning. But I'll start from the last. I think I like to think of myself now as a turnaround executive. And the reason why I say I like to think of myself is because I am an executive. But when I look deeply into what I really do, I'm at my best going to small and medium-sized businesses and existing kind of businesses, and for lack of better words, it's a turnaround. It's not a turnaround always from places where something is broken, you fix it, but a lot of times something is just stuck or is just squeaking. That's just where I'm at my best from a business perspective, people perspective, an overall holistic type of perspective. But my background goes quite a few years before that. I spent 6 years in China, in Beijing. I worked with, I had a team over there, a great team. At some point, we were like 90 people. That's where I actually started my first kind of CEO kind of role, where somebody just threw me in the water in it. A lot of the things that I am today kind of started with there. And there's wonderful people that I met along the ways. One in particular is a shout out to a dear friend, Rich Robinson. Back then, when we just started, he said, we started the mobile app, and I threw me at as a CEO of it, and I played basketball with him. And he basically said, I know how you play basketball. I know you would be great. And even though I haven't played anything except for, I don't know, Snake at that time, people might not even know what this is anymore. I said, don't worry about it. In 3 months, you would know more than anyone else. So there are a lot of things and fundamentals from that early kind of start of days that I take to who I am today. That's fundamentals and many other things. We can talk about that though.
Let me toss at you a quote that you have written because it caught my attention, and I'd like to have us talk about it a little bit. You say, in my view, there is a wonderful simplicity in the way people think, work, what motivates them, and etc., how they wish to be treated. What
Yeah.
do you mean by a wonderful simplicity?
You know what? It's come from my my basic thought process that people are the same in what they are and who they are and how they're constructed. I actually think the same also to companies. I think everything is built from the same basic fundamentals. There's not a lot of things that are complicated. Things are not complicated. They're actually fairly simple. Now, people are, and obviously businesses, there are things that are going to change and impact them. Cultures are stuff that impact people from probably the way that they then think. All right. But they're fundamentally built from the same thing. They want to be treated fairly. They are ambitious in their core essence. Most people are ambitious. Most people desire kind of things. Um, and I think that as such, if you really understand that, then the way that you communicate and talk to them is from that angle. Now, granted, cultures take it to a different kind of thing. Chinese has a certain culture. I dealt with people in Belgrade and in Latin America, and Indians are obviously from people in India are thinking kind of differently. There is this different set of hierarchy in them. But in each one of those individuals that I met and touched, I felt that I was able to connect, and not with all of them, right? Not all of them, probably not all of them have the same energy as I do. And that goes on to the same kind of thing, a similar kind of thing that I also have as a principle with what I want to lead and who I want to lead with. So I want to work with people who inspire me. So in many cases, I hear a lot like leaders need to inspire, right, the people that they work with, and I don't contradict that. Obviously, I need to be able to make an impact. I need to be able to inspire people around me. But I honestly, I honestly think of the reverse a lot more. Like I want people to inspire me. Reason being is that I have a limited amount of energy. I learned at a certain point, it just goes down. And unless I have things that re-energize me, then it is just hard. Then you're the one who have to continuously energize yourself. So I've learned that I want to be able to work with people who inspire me, and that's a symbiotic type of relationship inside of a company. I often say that the people around the company are a lot more important than I am inside of it. I don't take myself too seriously. I have a lot of qualities to give, granted, but I honestly think if we manage to get everyone in the company to grow, that's when the company grows. It will never grow if the people inside of the companies that will not grow. That sort of connects to it.
And as you have worked with companies all over the world, what, as you look back on your career, what was the toughest thing, the toughest nut you had to crack, and how did you do it?
Wow. Um, hmm. Look, when you say tough, it really depends on what angles. Honestly, to me, always the toughest is dealing with more my higher ups, less with the people that I work with. And that is really because of my own personality. So uh, I'm sure some people can relate, but I'm never satisfied. I'm always critical at what I do, and I've not done enough. Always critical. I'm the most critical person on myself, probably that there is. So the hardest kind of things for me were always to work with my board or owners, or that was always the hardest thing to me. I always felt like I wasn't doing enough. So I think that's a process. How are you able to work with people that can manage you, or that? How are you able to be okay with what you are, who you are, what you're giving, or in the next steps? But I think in people, I don't know. I think it's just about time. Look, I've ran into several difficult situations where I had to take over, or I came into a management or a CEO position with people that were very, very far away from me. When we first acquired eBaum's World, I was, and that's a site, one of the earlier user-generated kind of sites that there was. One of the core fundamentals of our internet that is today is eBaum's World. And we had a team in San Francisco back then. And honestly, they came and they saw who the company that I came from was, and they did not like what they were reading. So it was hard. I was in Israel, they were in San Francisco, 10 hours apart, very different cultures. Israelis, as always, are very straightforward with what they are, to the point where they're a lot of time insulting in who they are, because they're just straightforward. There's no barriers. And Americans definitely on the West Coast are a lot more reserved than that. So there are culture gaps to cross. Not always I cross them well. Sometimes I do well, sometimes I don't. I try to be as honest as I am, and I'm a very open book. And sometimes people take it well, sometimes people don't. Sometimes my decisions are great, sometimes very often they're not. Like the amount of mistakes that I've made are, I can't even begin to count them.
That seems to be one of the things that differentiate a lot of people, the ability to admit mistakes. Uh, was that a natural thing for you to do, or was that something as a leader you learned to do?
Yeah, I probably more take it as a personality. I'm not ashamed to admit. If you remember, I also said that I'm the least important kind of person in the room when it comes to the company. Again, I say that more as a matter of fact, and I don't know, matter of speech, but um, I don't know. Everyone make mistakes. Even from running a company, like who doesn't? Like running a company and making a profitable company, and definitely a small company, is hard. Is really hard. And you can't take it for granted. And everything is a roller coaster. And I admire people that start a company, that have a company, that run it. A, it's hard. B, it's grinding. C, at some point, you honestly, you have no clue what you're doing. Um, and I think it's okay to admit it. So, and at the end of the day, I'd like to go to fundamentals. I'm a very, very fundamentals type of person. I like to go to basics. I often even compare it to sports kind of teams where when something is squeaking and you're not really going, then you need to go back to the fundamentals. Think of the fundamentals, what makes it, and I think companies are very, very much the same. That's why I like the yearly planning. That's why I like to take that moment to reflect on what last year was. I'd like to even call years in a name because I consider them a chapter. So I really love it if I call that year a name. And then I go and I do, okay, so next year, what is next year? How am I going to call next year? And I call it now, but I'm thinking about it. If I'm going to go a year from now, what would I want this year to be? Now, and I believe, as you can imagine, in chapters, I don't believe that you can jump to chapter 23 of a book. You gotta be able to go through chapter one and two and three. And I know, like sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes you really want to already read chapter 15, but I find that if you're trying to rush it, A, you're gonna make mistakes. Um, B, you're very likely not gonna be successful in it because chapter 15 requires various things that you're building up that you're just not there. You're a small company, you want to be able to grow sales, you want to get people to have, you want to be able to have clients. But if you haven't really established some things that will come to your credibility or some things with regards to having some connection, you just can't. It's just not going to happen overnight. So there are steps that you need to do.
Let me suggest to you one of the biggest problems that's small, and I'm talking about, maybe 50 employees or fewer,
Mhm.
small businesses have is sales because the founder may have been a great developer of the widget and they make widgets like nobody else, but he's a horrible salesman. How do you go about finding the correct sales talent to develop a small business?
Wow. I'm not sure there is an answer to that. I don't think you can. I don't think there is an answer to that. The reason being is that you're talking about people. Now you can increase your probability of success, right? That's what we are really hoping for. And that's what you're hoping for in a company, as well as being able to hire the person that would fit it. So, okay, so let's go to my playbook. What is a good fit? Okay, so in number one, a good fit is a culture fit. It's the number one most important thing is that a person that you hire fits to you culturally, energetically, however you want to phrase it, okay? But the type of way that you operate and think, that person operates the same. It doesn't mean that they're the same, not at all, but the fundamental what they believe in needs to match, okay? Then then there's various kind of others. Um, you would probably start to narrow it down by referrals. You start to narrow it down by background. You start to narrow it down by speaking to that person. Um, but I think there are a lot of good fits. You're gonna have, especially sales. Sales is a unique one. It's a unique one because no matter how much you try, you can't get away from the expectation and the desire for that person to yield results very, very quickly. I found it time after time. You're trying, you're telling to yourself it's a process. It will take time. But man, like comes a month and another month kind of goes by and nothing kind of happens, and you start to get really, you start to get agitated. Maybe it's not the right person. Maybe we're not doing the right thing. How do you trust the process or how do you trust that what you're going on the path is a really tough question, because you can find yourself over a year has passed or a significant time has passed and nothing has changed, and some of the fundamentals that you wanted to did not operate. I don't know. I'm not sure that I have a brilliant answer. So I think this is more about the broad thing inside of the company rather than just going and pinning it down on the exact salesperson. I don't think there's anyone who can just save the day. So you got to be able to look at it more holistically, and you got to be able to look at yourself and think for yourself, are these the right things? Do we focus on the right things? All right. And focus on the right things. So it doesn't really mean also, it means narrowing down. A company cannot focus on, like, there can't be 10 priorities. That just cannot happen. So I would say 3, 5, you know what? 3 to 5 priorities. And even then, they're not going to be at the same kind of area. And then also goals. So those would be it. And as I think you probably would agree, it's much harder to narrow down priorities than it is to add. Adding is so easy, right? But narrowing down is just hard. Like, what are we not going to do is so much harder than what we will be doing. So I think it's a broader thing than a salesperson.
Ori, where can our listeners and viewers reach you? Do you have a website, perhaps?
I'm more on the link. I'm currently more in the LinkedIn kind of part. That is because I haven't really gone after, okay, this is who I am and where you can reach me. So I'm at the phase that I'm going to be as down to earth as you possibly can. Reach me on LinkedIn. I'm passionate about small businesses. I really want to help, and you can find me there.
What would you like to add that I just haven't been bright enough to ask you?
I don't know. There's a whole lot of things that we can talk about, but I think, as you said, sometimes less is more.
You've been listening to the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@bizgnus.com. That's BIZGNUS.com. Thanks for listening.